Hello and welcome to Body Positive Exercise Day number 1. Today is all about stretching. So we're going to stretch our body physically as well as our mind. So what does that mean, stretching our mind? We're really going to explore our beliefs we have about exercise. Like, what meanings do we attach to exercise? What types of bodies do we associate with being in shape or fit? Like, where do these beliefs come from? So there's a worksheet attached to every single day that you're going to get with this Body Positive Exercise program. And in today's program, it's really important that you look that over and complete it, because that's going to be where you stretch your mind. So this is not another Get the Body You Want program, in case you haven't noticed. We're really here to celebrate your body, to make peace with your body, and to explore what it is to feel good in your body and moving joyfully in the body you already have. So keeping in mind that this is a weight neutral program. Weight is neither good nor bad. It simply is. It's another piece of the puzzle that defines our health. It's not the encompassing definition of our health. So keeping that in mind when you look into what defines healthy and what defines success in your exercise program. One of the key things we want to explore when we stretch our beliefs about exercise is, how do we define a successful exercise regimen or an exercise plan? And like I said earlier, this is not going to be another Get the Body You Want program. So really finding what defines success for you is going to be super important going forward. So take a moment, check out those worksheets, complete them, and join me back here on the mat for some stretching. So these are all the stretches in a seated position in a chair. To make this more accessible, not only for people that don't have the ability to get down to a mat, but also maybe you're stuck on a plane, maybe you're stuck in the office and you still want to feel good in your body and stretch. This is how you're going to do it. So first off, we're going to do a spinal twist seated. So you want to make sure you're seated evenly on your sitting bones, sitting up tall, finding length in your spine. Take a breath in to lengthen, and then choosing a side, you're going to exhale and twist. So there's so many different variations for the hands with this, depending on the chair as well. I like to take one across to the bottom and wrap one around the back of the chair. If there's no back of the chair, you can also reach your arm back. That gives you a little bit more chest expansion. So the twisting mantra is always inhale to lengthen the spine, exhale to twist. If it's accessible for your neck, you may want to turn your neck and turn your face towards your hand that's extending back, or towards the arm that's wrapped around the chair. Hold for about 3 to 5 breaths, finding length as you inhale and finding a deeper twist as you exhale. Figure 4 stretch seated. So we're going to take one ankle across to the opposite knee. Again, seated equally on both sits bones, so you don't want to shift weight to one side or the other. Lengthen through the spine. You can place one hand on your knee to press it down to find a little bit more stretch in the hip. One hand on your ankle, take a breath in to lengthen, and then exhale, you're going to come forward. To protect your knee, it's really important that you flex this foot that's on top of your opposite knee. It just gives you a little bit more engagement in the muscle, and it helps to stabilize your knee. So again, you're going to inhale, lengthen the spine, find length, upper back, lower back, exhale, fold forward. So it's super important when you're folding forward for any exercise or any stretch that you really find the length in your lower back first. If the lower back is rounded when you're stretching, you're going to shift what the stretch is really all about and not really stretch the muscles that you're intending. So always remember, finding length before you find depth. So cat-cow seated is going to be a little different from when you're on all fours. You want to have your feet about hip socket distance apart or wider. You're going to take your hands on your knees, and this is really all about finding that motion in the spine, the entire spine. So you're going to inhale, slightly rock forward of your sitting bones, lift the sternum, lift the chest, maybe take your gaze up, again, if it's accessible for your neck. And then you're going to exhale and dome your spine and round back, maybe going towards the back of your sitting bones. Inhale, pulling your chest forward, looking up. Exhale and round as you round back and dome the upper lower back, roll behind the sitting bones. Inhale, coming forward. Exhale, rounding the spine. I like to do about 3 to 5 of these. So forward fold seated. You want to make sure that your feet are about, again, hip socket distance or wider. Toes can be turned out or pointed straight ahead. You're going to make sure, again, that you find length in your spine before you find depth. So I like taking my hands to my knees. You can also take your hands to the chair. You're going to inhale, find length in your spine first. And then exhale as you fold forward. If it's not possible to reach your hands to the floor, you can always place some books or maybe a couple of yoga blocks underneath your hands. But again, you want to find length in your spine before you find depth. So the most common mistake that I find people doing this is when they round the spine and do this. And that's going to lead to a lot of impingement in your back, and it's just not going to feel good. So making sure, again, you inhale, find length, exhale, find depth. The depth isn't so much important as the length of your spine. Hold in that lengthened position where you feel a stretch but not pain. So we're looking for sensation, not pain. Holding again for 3 to 5 breaths. This is forward fold seated. So low lunge seated is going to be a little bit trickier than the other seated exercises. We're going to face to the side, take one leg forward. Again, if you don't have a back to the chair, doesn't matter really which way you face. You're going to take one foot forward and start to reach your other leg back. So you're going to have to sit more towards the edge of the chair. I really recommend having a chair with a back on it in order to have that stability. So you're going to reach that back leg back. This is going to give you that stretch in your hip flexor. So you want to make sure that your hip bone, your knee, and your shoulder and your ear are all in one line. If that feels okay, if you don't feel enough sensation or you want more sensation with the stretch, you might want to slightly slide your back foot back even further. That's going to give you more of a stretch. So when you do this, you really want to watch what your lower back's doing. It's easy to dump into that lower spine. So making sure you draw the tailbone down, soften the front ribs in, keep the sternum lifted to keep length in your spine. Taking your hand to your hip is a really good way to know where the hip bone is located. And you're going to hold here again for 3 to 5 breaths. So this is child's pose seated. You want to make sure that you have a bolster or a pillow. You can even use a couch cushion if that's firmer for you. But you're going to place whatever you have on top of your thighs. You're going to sit up tall, find length in your spine. You might want to stretch out first with the arms, taking a breath in. And then reach forward first as long as possible and then allow the spine to round. This is going to be the only forward fold where your spine is going to have that nice rounding sensation because you have support. So 2 options for hands. You can take your hands to the bolster here or maybe keeping them out and just allow your hands to release, turning the palms up. You can keep the head lifted if it doesn't feel good to allow your head to release, or finally ending with the forehead releasing down into the bolster or down into the hands. So next up is Sphinx pose seated. So you're going to place your hands down on tops of the knees or the thighs. Feet are going to be flat, equal weight on both sitting bones. You're going to inhale to lengthen the spine, lifting the sternum and chest up as you draw the tailbone down into the seat. So really making sure that you draw the tailbone down. That's going to be your base of support. If you don't have that drawing down sensation, it's going to be a little bit difficult to lift up and find a little more length in your upper spine. So you're going to inhale to lengthen your spine and extend the upper back as you find some rounding and a little bit of a tuck of the tailbone to find that upper back lift. You can lift your chest, lift your chin, lift your face up towards the ceiling if that's accessible for your neck, or you can keep your face straight ahead, looking for that extension in the upper back. Hands on the legs are going to give you a little bit more of a press downing effect as you draw your elbows in. Pull the shoulder blades back, expand across the collarbones. Holding here for about 3 to 5 breaths. Next we have chest expansion seated. So you're going to interlace your hands behind your back like this, or if that's not, again, accessible because of the back of the chair, you can always turn towards the side. If that's not possible for your shoulder, you can pick a fist-to-fist placement, or you might even want to grab wrists or opposite elbows. Either way, whatever choice that you've made, you want to find that broadening across the collarbones, that expansion across the chest, shoulder blades draw together, ribs soften down in the front. So the thing you want to avoid is lifting the lower ribs up. When that happens, your lower back might have too much of an arch in it, and it might start to have impingement in your lower back. So making sure that the tailbone draws down, sternum stays lifted as the ribs soften down. So you're going to reach the hands down if you have the interlace of the hands. If you have opposite elbows or fists together or even grabbing opposite wrists, you want to keep reaching those down as well as you lift your sternum up. So next we have eagle arm stretch, and this is really related to eagle arms pose in yoga. 2 different ways you can do this. So you can do the traditional way that they do in yoga. You're going to cross one elbow over the other and wrap the hands around. Or if this isn't accessible for you because of shoulder issues or whatever, you're going to take palm together and elbow together. I'm going to demonstrate this way since we did the other way on the mat. So palm together, elbows together. You want to lift your arms up as high as you can without allowing your elbows to separate. That means once you've gotten up too far and the elbows start to separate, that means that you're not getting that real stretch in your shoulders. So really drawing those elbows together. As you reach your arms up, you want to make sure that the shoulders release down. So it's like they're moving in opposite directions. Once you can't go any further and you still want some more sensation, you might choose to draw the palms forward. Again, making sure that the elbows don't release and the palms don't release. Shoulders release down, keeping your gaze straight ahead, either having the eyes opened or closed, and taking about 3 to 5 breaths holding this static stretch. So our last stretch seated is side bend. 2 options for hand placement. You can take your hand onto the chair or stretch the hand down to your side. You're going to take the opposite side arm up. So it's really important that you find, again, that equal weight on both sitting bones, on both hips. You're going to inhale, find length in the arm side that's stretching up. Take a breath in, exhale as you stretch over. So if your hand's down towards the floor, you really want to feel like you're actively reaching towards the floor. If this isn't accessible for you because there's not enough stability or balance in this, you might want to choose to take your hand to the chair instead to give you a little bit more stability. You're going to inhale again to lengthen, exhale finding depth. Making sure that you have that side that's stretching over, that side hip is really rooting down in order to find the stretch in that side. Taking about 3 breaths here, inhaling to lengthen, exhaling to find depth. So laying down on your mat, we're going to start with spinal twist. So you're going to take one knee into your chest. The opposite leg's going to be straight out. Taking the knee in, you're going to take a breath in, and you're going to exhale as you draw that leg across the opposite side. So many different choices for the arm. So you can extend the arm straight out to the side with the palm facing up, or you might want to bend the elbow into a 90 degree with the back of the palm reaching towards the floor. If the shoulder and the palm do not touch the floor, that's okay. Remember, we're looking to feel sensation. There's no perfect stretch. There's no perfect pose. So you're going to take a breath in here, and then exhale, maybe draw a little bit closer with that knee towards the floor, maybe broaden the shoulders a little bit more, and hold here for about 3 to 5 breaths. So our next stretch is the figure 4 stretch. We're going to lay down on our mat. Take your ankle across the opposite knee and then drawing that leg in towards your chest. If you want a little bit more sensation in the stretch in your hip, you might choose to press this knee away. And you're really looking to have equal weight on both sides of your hips, both sides of your sacrum, making sure that the tailbone is reaching down. It's really easy to allow that hip to roll up, so it's really important to keep rooting the tailbone down, pushing the knee away from you if you want that deeper sensation. So you're going to hold here for about 3 to 5 breaths. So our next stretch is going to be our cat-cow stretch. And unlike the other stretches, this is going to be a more dynamic stretch, meaning we're going to move in order to stretch as opposed to staying static in our stretches. So you're going to find all fours, shoulders stack over the wrists, knees directly underneath the hips. You want to have equal weight distributed amongst your hands and your knees. Keeping your gaze down first, you're going to take a breath in. You're going to exhale as you dome the back, so drawing the tailbone down, rounding the upper back, and maybe looking in between the legs as you actively press the floor away with the hand, shoulder spread on your upper back. Inhale, you're going to draw your chest forward, maybe look up, pull the shoulder blades down. Tailbone's going to lift, but you want to make sure that the core still is engaged so you don't dump into that lower back so much. Taking a breath in here. And then exhale as you round the spine, press the floor away, dome upper and lower back. You can continue to do this, moving with breath, inhaling to lift, exhaling to round for about 3 to 5 rounds of breath. So our next stretch is child's pose stretch. This is a wonderful stretch for your lower back and your hips and just your overall sense of well-being. It's one of my favorite stretches. So you're going to take your knees either wider than hip socket distance, or you can keep your knees closer together. With the knees closer together, this is gonna get more into your lower back. With the knees wider, it's gonna get your lower back, but also in your hips. So I like taking my knees wide because it just allows me to get deeper into the stretch. So you're gonna take a breath in here, and then exhale, walk the hands forward, allow the chest to release towards the floor. And so many options for your head. If you have a pillow that you'd like to place on the mat before the head touches the floor because maybe the forehead doesn't meet the floor, you might choose that. You might choose to allow your forehead to come all the way down. But either way, you want to make sure that your head is supported on the mat in order to get that complete release downward into the mat. For arm choices, you can either choose to take the arms forward, maybe actively stretch the arms forward so that the elbows lift, or you may choose to release your arms back along your legs like this, or you might even choose to take your hands all the way back, releasing the forehead down. So our next stretch is forward fold. So you're gonna start with taking your legs straight out onto the mat. And before you do anything, you really wanna analyze what your lower back is doing. Is it rounding or is it lengthened? This is gonna really determine how you go about doing this stretch. If the lower back is rounding, when you bend your knees up and you can't seem to find length in your lower back, you might wanna choose to sit up a little higher on a pillow, on a couch cushion, on a yoga bolster. You might even have some yoga blocks that work good for you. But sitting up higher is gonna allow most people to find a little bit more length in your spine, as well as keeping your legs straight. So I'm gonna demonstrate this on the bolster first, and then I'll demonstrate it on the floor. So first you're gonna find length in your spine. You're gonna engage your quadricep muscles, these thigh muscles here in the front of your leg. You're gonna draw your toes back so your legs are active. You're gonna inhale, stretch the arms forward and up, lengthening through the spine even more. And then exhale, you're gonna stretch forward, finding length. Take a pause once your exhale has completed. Inhale, lengthen again, stretching forward, and then exhale, folding into the legs. You always though want to maintain that length in the lower back. Every time you take a breath in, that allows you to find length in the spine. Each breath out, you can explore some depth. So that's forward fold on a bolster. Forward fold without the bolster is going to look very similar. However, especially if you don't have a bolster around and you want to find length in your lower back, you might want to have a little bend in your knees. So that's again going to allow you to find that length here. If the legs can be straight with the length in your back, then that's great too. But I'm going to demonstrate this with the knees bent. You're going to inhale, stretch the arms forward and up, pull the toes back, engage the legs still. Exhale as you reach forward, finding length. Again, inhale, lengthen here, reaching forward, exhale, fold into the legs. Hands can come to the mat, they can come to shins, they can come to ankles. Maybe they wrap around your feet, but again, with each inhale, finding that length in your spine. With each exhale, deepening down into the stretch. Our next stretch is a low lunge. So I like to get into this by getting onto all fours. You're gonna walk your hands across to one side of the mat and then swing the leg forward and around. You might wanna slide that back leg back a little bit more. And then you're going to either come to your fingertips on either side of the foot or maybe on the same side as the foot. It really depends on your body type. Find what is accessible to you in order to feel a stretch maybe in your hamstring in the front leg, but most hopefully in your back hip flexor. So if your fingertips don't hit the floor, that's all good. We have blocks, or you might want to use books, anything that's going to give you a little bit more height. You can always have a chair available for you next to you if that works better for you, if that's what you have at your home. You're going to allow your hips to sink down. As you allow the hips to sink down, in order to protect your lower back, you want to think of your tailbone drawing down towards the floor. That's also going to help give your hip flexor a little bit more of a stretch as well. So again, you're going to inhale and exhale here, just holding this stretch, making sure that you're drawing down the tailbone, keeping your chest lifted, taking about 3 to 5 breaths on this leg, and then switching legs. So our next stretch is Sphinx pose, and this is a typical pose that you would find in a yoga class. This is a prone pose, so that means we're going to lay down on our stomachs or on our front. You're going to take your elbows directly underneath your shoulders and release your toes straight back. If this doesn't feel good for the tops of your feet for whatever reason, you're always more than welcome to tuck the toes under. But I'm going to demonstrate this with my toes pointing straight back. You want to press actively down into the forearms to lift the chest. You're going to draw the tailbone towards the heels, or you might want to think of pushing down through the pubic bone in order to find length in your lower back. You're going to engage the quadricep muscles by squeezing the kneecaps up towards the hips and then pressing down evenly through all 10 toes. So you're going to look forward, you're going to inhale, draw the shoulders back, and exhale, holding here for about 3 to 5 breaths. So this can also be done with a bolster. If for whatever reason getting down that far onto the floor isn't accessible for you, you're going to place this underneath your hips, like the frontal hip points. So you're going to take this here, and again, placing the elbows here or maybe lifting up slightly. This is going to allow you to have a little less of an arch in your lower back, but still find that little lift or that extension in your upper back. So again, still the same cues. You want to press down through all 10 toes, engage the leg muscles. So this almost turns into more of an upward facing dog pose. You're going to pull your chest forward, draw the shoulder blades back, holding here for about 3 to 5 breaths. So our next stretch is chest expansion. We're going to demonstrate this 2 different ways. First of all, kneeling. So you're going to either take your feet together underneath your hips, or you might want to take your feet apart with your knees together and sit your hips down in between your heels or your ankles. This is called Virasana pose in yoga. So I'm going to demonstrate it this way because this is just a little nicer on my knees. You're going to interlace your hands behind your back, reach the knuckles down, draw the shoulder blades together, inhale, lift the sternum up, and draw the tailbone down towards the floor. So again, maintaining the length in the lower back in order to protect the lower back as you find extension in the upper back and the upper spine. Taking about 3 to 5 breaths here. Your chin might be lifted. You might release the head all the way back, or you might choose to keep your gaze straight ahead. So that's a kneeling variation. Another variation is laying down prone again onto the mat. Now have the same type of footing as you do for the Sphinx pose. You're going to take your forehead all the way down to the mat first, like this. And then once the forehead's all the way down, you're going to interlace your hands behind your lower back. Stretch the knuckles towards the heels. You're going to draw the shoulder blades back, and on an inhale, you're going to lift your chest and your legs at the same time. So it's super important to think more about length as opposed to height. So I'm lengthening out through the crown of my head, I'm drawing my toes back, I'm reaching my knuckles back, and I'm rooting down through my pubic bone in order to maintain length in my lower spine. You're going to hold here for about... So our next stretch is eagle arms. And you can do this either seated on the mat or sitting upright more on a bolster or pillow. The reason for the bolster or pillow would be so you can find length in your lower back. You're going to sit in an easy cross-legged position. This is Sukhasana. And you're going to take your arms out side to side as you take a breath in. Exhale, and you're going to cross one arm over the other arm. And you want to make sure that the elbows are crossed at the elbows as opposed to the upper arms. You're going to hook the hands together, and you're going to draw your shoulder blades away from your ears. So when we demonstrate this in the seated stretches on the chair, I'll show you a different variation for the arms if this isn't accessible for you. So when you're here, you want to make sure the shoulders stay away from the ears. You're going to inhale, draw the arms up as high as you can without letting the shoulders come up with the arms. You're going to exhale the arms to come forward. So when the arms come forward, you're going to feel a little bit more of a deeper stretch across the upper back of the shoulders. Again, making sure the shoulders can release down. So holding here for about 3 to 5 breaths, and then switching sides, taking the opposite arm on top. So this next stretch is side bend stretch. And you can either do this, again, seated in this Virasana pose with the feet resting on the heels, your feet underneath or in between your ankles, or you might want to have a block in between your ankles like so, and having your hips rest on this. That's just another variation of Virasana. So with this side bending pose, you want to make sure that you have length in your spine. It's all about finding length before finding depth, especially in stretching. So we're going to take both arms straight up towards the ceiling, taking a breath in. And you're going to exhale, release one hand down towards the floor or onto the floor. Take another breath in, find length on the side of the hand that's up towards the ceiling, and then exhale as you bend down towards the floor on the side where the hand's touching the floor. Again, it's more important that you find length in your spine as opposed to finding depth. Taking about 3 to 5 breaths here. Each breath you find length in the spine, each breath you find the depth. Thank you so much for joining me for stretch day number 1. I'm so excited for day number 2 with you. If you have any questions about the stretches that we presented today, please feel free to email me at robin@intuitiveexercise.com. And please don't forget to go over those worksheets. They're super important in order to stretch your mind, to redefine success in exercise. Have a great day.